scholars. I want to tell you a little bit about the compare and contrast essay. I want to be very clear that first of all, the essay is an essay of literary analysis. The main thing you want to do is focus on two poems, not on the tragic event. The tragic event is the centerpiece. It's the event that prompted so many people to write. But the poems, I think, show you that there's a whole array of approaches to looking at the event. Some poets seem angrier than others. Some seem more hopeful. Some use a closed form poem which may be more familiar to a general audience, hoping to appeal to a wider audience, while others just use whatever form they think is appropriate, perhaps for reflecting the chaos and the uncertainty of the times. So there's a whole array of poems, and this essay is for you, is asking you to compare and contrast two poems, not to write a paper about the historical event. So focus on the poems, not the event. That's number one. Number two, make sure you use all of the resources available to you. Mostly that would be under the course document section of class in the Birmingham folder. Now, that Birmingham folder does have the handouts that explain the parts of the writing process and the actual whole assignment itself, but there are a couple of other handouts in there. One handout is on the poetry terms. It kind of reviews some of the terms real specific to this assignment. That's on a handout form. There's also a video in there that sort of reviews the same thing. Those should be very helpful as far as trying to set up that compare-contrast worksheet and figuring out what elements are what in each of the poems. The whole reason you do that compare-contrast worksheet, or that I ask you to do that, is so that you can start thinking about what elements of these two poems do I want to focus on in my paper. For example, are the speakers very similar in each poem? Like perhaps in Randall's poem and Patterson's poem, where the speaker seems to be somebody who is able to sort of look in at this intimate situation between mother and daughter in a home, and then sees the situation at the church later. Those speakers are similar, and so you might want to choose those speakers in those two poems to compare. But anyway, you're going to look at speaker or tone or imagery or figurative language or allusions or structure. You're going to choose a few elements to compare and contrast. That's the Poetry Terms video, and the Poetry Terms handout can help you with that part. When it's time to do the scratch outline, which is a tentative thesis statement, and then just a basic, like here's what body paragraph 1 will be about, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, it would probably be most helpful to look at the thesis statement advice handout. That offers you some pretty generic templates that you can use to create the thesis statement. And the thesis statement that I suggest you create even sometimes has a roadmap in it. And when I say roadmap, I mean, well, I'm going to look at how these two elements or these three elements are different. You're going to name the elements, and then you know body paragraph 1 is about element 1, and so on. So check out that sheet, because that might help you write a good thesis statement, which in turn might help you just kind of sketch out how you might organize your essay, which is what I'm looking for in that scratch outline and tentative thesis statement form. If you haven't been instructed in writing compare and contrast essays, I want to remind you that the thesis statement should contain 3 things. 1, you should name the subjects you're writing about, and that's going to be the 2 poems, whichever 2 you're choosing. Secondly, it should be clear in your thesis statement whether you're going to look at how these poems are similar, whether you're going to look at how these poems are different, or whether you're going to look at how these 2 poems are both alike and different. That's kind of hard to do. If you're feeling comfortable, go ahead and do that. If you're not feeling so comfortable with this assignment, my advice would be to focus either on similarities or on differences to keep it a little bit more manageable. That's up to you. So you got to have the subjects, 2 poems, similarities, differences, or both, and then finally the point you're trying to make. Okay, you are going to show how these poems are different or how they're similar, and what point do you want to make? So what? So what they're different, so what they're similar. Perhaps it's amazing that 2 people could have the same approach to such a traumatic event or something, or maybe it's amazing how different approaches can yield same emotional responses from readers, or something like that. So those are the 3 things you have to have. That's on that thesis statement advice handout, those 3 elements. I want to review, you have two ways to organize a paper like this. You could either go point by point or subject by subject, and this is on page 136, 137 in your textbook, a review of that. And I've just got two sheets to kind of show you that, and this is showing you my lack of technological resources, but just to make it quick and easy, point by point would take each element that you're talking about and then look at each poem. So in a point by point, you might look at tone first and look at how poem 1 deals with tone, and then how poem 2 deals with tone. Then you might look at imagery and look at how poem 1 deals with imagery and how poem 2 deals with imagery. And finally, you might look at figurative language and look at how poem 1 deals with it and how poem 2 deals with it. This is called point by point. I'm just going to hold this up here for a minute. I'm going to try to hopefully hold it so you can see all of it, and then I'm going to put it up here closer just so you can get a general idea, point by point. Under the external links part in class and under getting started, I give you a link to OWL, which is the Purdue University Online Writing Lab. That particular website does review compare and contrast writing and helps you, with the organization. Most of you will probably go point by point for this essay. There is the subject by subject method as well, which that means you'll go poem then by poem. And so subject by subject will look something like this, where first you look at poem 1 and you look at the tone, the imagery, and the figurative language in poem 1. And then you look at poem 2 and you look at the tone, imagery, and figurative language. And, again, that is reviewed on the OWL site. Your textbook touches on it just very briefly. If you have a handbook from 111, the Harbrace that you might have had with Ms. Smith, it's in there. If you had me for English 111, look in your successful college writing if you didn't sell it back, and look under the compare contrast. So I hope that this gives you some good advice for really getting a good start on the essay, the compare contrast essay for your English 112 class. From Keller, Virginia, I'll say goodbye for today.